This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Want to know the best part about being in an empty office during the holidays? I don't have to fake smile during white elephant gift exchanges. Bow! Here's what we got for y'all. Despite the economic slump, people are still spending, especially on spruces. We'll talk about the woody holiday cheer a lot of us couldn't go without. Plus, a professional Santa Claus school has been preparing for this moment all year long. But this year, holidays looking a bit different. We'll tell you about how old St. Nick has been adapting during the pandemic. But before we get to that, there's been a decade's worth of news this year. We've done our best to keep you up to the speed every weeknight, but the pandemic and the presidential election seem to suck all of the oxygen out of the newsroom. Not like literally, I'm fine. So yeah, some pretty important stories fell through the cracks for both news people like us and probably a lot of you at home. So tonight, as we prepare to put a bow on 2020, we're highlighting some of the things we thought deserved just a little more attention. Starting with this. What do you know? Some good news. Carbon emissions, aka the leading cause of global warming, fell 7% this year. That's the biggest yearly drop ever recorded, according to the Global Carbon Project. And it only took an Earth-halting global pandemic to do it. A decline in transportation worldwide was the main reason for the emission decrease. No surprise there, since so much activity shifted online or work from home as soon as the pandemic hit. Of course, this isn't likely to become a years-long trend, which means this will barely make a dent in the long-term fight against global warming. To actually make a difference, this year's emissions gap report found countries need to roughly triple their emission-cutting pledges. Some trends persisted, even with the pandemic. Unfortunately, this was one of them. Even in a year when Americans spent so much of their time indoors and isolated, the nation still saw an increase in mass shootings. According to the Gun Violence Archive, by December 8th of this year, there were already more than 590 mass shootings in 2020. That's compared to 417 the previous year. That's more than a 40% increase. Now, gun reform is a topic that usually would have come up plenty during a presidential election year, but it really took a back seat this year, even as gun sales skyrocketed like we've mentioned before on this show. We should note that mass shootings only make up a fraction of overall gun deaths. The majority in this year and every recent year has come from suicides. But the increase in mass shootings have been more pronounced than in previous years. President-elect Joe Biden has made his stance on gun reform pretty clear.
I introduced the first assault weapons ban. I, in fact, got it passed. I'm the only guy that beat the NRA twice.
One of the first things Biden wants to do is put in place universal background checks for gun purchases. But proposing legislation and getting it passed are two very different things. Congress hasn't passed a major gun reform bill in more than 25 years. The sports world obviously saw a ton of changes this past year, but while it was the empty stadiums and interrupted seasons that got all the attention, there was one other big trend building: legal sports gambling. Since the federal ban lifted in 2018, at least 19 states in the District of Columbia now allow some sort of legal sports betting. And it's really paid off during the pandemic. Just maybe not for most of those placing the bets. In October alone, Americans legally wagered at least $2.82 billion, yes, with a B, on sports. 803 million of that came from New Jersey alone, which has set new records for sports betting the last 4 months in a row. But while a federal ban was lifted, states still have to go through the process of legalizing it on the state level. For ages, man has looked to the heavens and wondered whether we're alone in the universe. Earlier this year, the Pentagon said, "Nah, we got company." In late April, the Pentagon officially released 3 videos from the US Navy shot in 2005 and 2015 that shows something that ain't ours.
Oh, go ahead! Roger, there's troubleshooting.
The DoD said in a statement they released the videos because they don't reveal any sensitive information or mess up any existing investigations. They added that they put the videos out in order to clear up any misconceptions after some of it previously leaked, and this is where things get weird. The clips in question were originally leaked by a UFO research agency connected to Blink-182 founder and former member Tom DeLonge before the DoD acknowledged their existence. But the videos actually came from a once covert program within the Office of Naval Intelligence. In August, the DoD officially announced the establishment of a subsequent program called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, to detect, analyze, and catalog unidentified aerial phenomena that could potentially pose a threat to U.S. national security. Folks, the truth is out there. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself. Back in September, the Trump administration announced a national eviction moratorium through the CDC, which allowed qualified tenants to avoid being evicted through the end of the year. Housing advocates praised the move, especially in a year when the pandemic drove up record levels of unemployment. But the moratorium has hurt many small landlords, with some asking for help as the moratorium threatens their incomes. Newsy's Angela Hill has more.
So this is me right here, and I'm in the midst of taking advantage of the COVID and painting.
Wanda Walker is a small mom-and-pop landlord in Philadelphia. She says she's feeling the burden of the eviction moratorium.
6 months a year of someone not paying rent at $700 or $800 or $1,000. I mean, that's major. The tenant's not paying rent and leaving with a balance owed leaves me with money not in my hand to pay for repairs, pay the mortgage, pay for my child's school.
She owns 3 rental properties and says 3 tenants are 4 months behind in rent. She's scared.
We're in fear of losing our buildings because we can't get rent. We can't pay the taxes that they're still expecting us to pay.
According to a recent survey from Avail, a platform that helps mom-and-pop landlords manage their properties, 37% of landlords said they expect to face an increased financial burden due to the national eviction moratorium.
The problem with this small mom-and-pop landlord space is that it's very fragmented. There's not really a comprehensive universal policies to help them kind of weather this crisis.
Nationwide, about 40% of rental units are owned by individual investors rather than companies. And about 30% of landlord households have low to moderate income of less than $90,000. Cities and states across the country are piecemealing rental assistance programs that primarily focus on helping tenants, not landlords.
I would like to see, going forward, any type of help that they're giving to go to the landlord.
There are continued calls for the federal government to do more through additional CARES Act funds. Eviction moratoriums particularly impact small Black and Latino landlords. According to a recent Urban Institute report, they have lower incomes, own fewer properties, and are more likely to have a mortgage than own their building outright.
Black and Hispanic landlords, they're more likely to own 2 to 4 unit properties. Those tenants are most vulnerable to the impact of COVID-19 on their job situation. So that is actually imposing a greater financial distress on those landlords of color,
making Black and Hispanic landlords more vulnerable to investors looking to buy their property to fix up and sell at higher costs.
I'm getting calls 3, 4, 5 a day. I had someone show up at my house to offer me cash money for one of my properties. And yes, I have. I've thought of selling everything.
But she believes in the importance of generational wealth and doesn't want to see people like herself squeezed out of property ownership.
With every single property I brought, except for the first one, I had it earmarked to one of my 3 children.
Even with the eviction bans coming to an end, Walker says the financial damage has already been done. She's not confident things will get much better.
I really don't believe that I am going to get help until I see it.
Angela Hill, Newsy, Washington.
All right, we're going to take a quick nog break. If you really want to have some fun during the show, go ahead and take a swig every time I blink. By the looks of it, more people than ever before decorated for the holiday season this year and got an early start doing so. No shade, but y'all know the rules. You're supposed to chill with that nonsense until after Thanksgiving. After. But the rush to get Christmas trees caught some tree farmers off guard. They assumed economic turmoil might deter people from spending. National reporter Alicia Nieves shows us that definitely wasn't the case.
What's the difference between them?
Frasers are a lot denser than that of the balsams.
Christmas tree sellers and farmers are surprised by sales this year.
Sales have been up quite a lot. We initially thought maybe perhaps people were buying early because You know, they look forward to Christmas and so on. Now we think there's just more people buying, and they're buying early.
Christopher Gregory has owned Elsie's and Sons Christmas trees in Boston for 47 years and never expected this holiday season to be one of his busiest. In fact, just a few weeks ago,
we were afraid there'd be a shutdown. You know, we get all the trees in the day after they'll shut down. Okay, no Christmas trees this year, and we'll be sitting here with thousands of Christmas trees and no buyers.
It's too small. It's too small? You can't go much higher than that.
Sales for Christmas trees, wreaths, and almost every holiday decoration are selling so fast.
From Quebec this morning, 6 a.m.
We're running out of stuff, and it's only the 8th of December.
The Boston-based Christmas tree seller just had to get an extra supply of trees from a farm in Canada and still expects to run out early. At least one nearby Christmas tree farm already sold out and closed up shop for the year.
So this would be 60.
The surge in tree sales here is also being seen across the country. Overall, Christmas tree sales are up almost 30%. Not the typical consumer reaction in an economic recession.
Okay, so this one would be 70?
Usually people spend less on these things during a financial downturn.
25 to 125.
It's a comfort to people, I think. You know, the tradition and observing the tradition and having the decorating the house and so on, planning meals and so on. It's this is what people get pleasure from now.
It may also be a distraction and an effort to stay optimistic.
Okay, let's cut it open. I'll show you what it looks like.
Despite the changes brought about by 2020.
Merry Christmas. Thank you, guys.
I'm Alicia Nieves reporting.
Well, thank you so much.
What's fun is that if you have curious cats like me, you don't have to worry about any of this because a tree wouldn't work. Public transit systems have been hit hard during the pandemic, and despite whether you personally take public transportation, the decline in ridership is also an economic indicator of sorts. Now there are concerns that cuts to service could hurt the economy's recovery. National reporter Chris Conti explains.
They come and go with less frequency now.
Face coverings are required.
Empty trains across the country, public transit in peril, as the pandemic has kept people away from traveling in large crowds.
Transit is definitely in trouble.
That's Jared Johnson. He oversees the group Transit Matters. It's not the empty trains and buses that bother him so much as the proposed cuts on the horizon as ridership nationwide has plummeted.
There's definitely going to be plenty of people inconvenienced and some people even stranded.
36 million people across the country depend on public transit, but they just aren't riding right now. So revenues are down dramatically. In Washington, D.C., the Metro is losing $100 million a month. In New York City, the MTA is facing $16 billion in cuts. Denver's RTD is facing a $166 million shortfall by year's end. San Francisco's light rail is $33 million in the hole.
Now it's really time for our political leaders to step up and provide the funding that transit needs.
Another big concern is that if public transit services are cut now, they won't be there for riders when the pandemic is over.
A lot of governors are thinking about a reopening strategy for the spring and summer of next year, and they need to make sure that transit is there to be a critical part of that reopening strategy.
Something else is also happening. Demand for used cars is booming, with prices rising more than 9%. The concern is that people will permanently ditch public transit after the pandemic, only making congestion issues worse.
There are also housing implications to all of this. For years, cities and towns across the country have been incentivizing developers to build apartment and housing complexes near transit hubs. But with more Americans working from home, the need for that kind of housing has basically disappeared.
It's not like people aren't choosing to take transit on their trips. They're not taking trips.
Beth Osborne is with Transportation for America. She's worried that if cities and states cut public services, people won't be able to get back to work.
I think we have to ask ourselves, do we want our economy to function or not? It's as simple as that. Either we want economic recovery and we want a strong economy, or we don't.
Why keeping the country moving on the other side of this pandemic is so important.
This may be the spotlight that forces us to make the changes we should have made before anyway.
In Boston, I'm Chris Conti.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Little secret, Twitter is the one place I haven't put up an away message, so have at it. Dr. Fauci said Santa doesn't have to follow the COVID quarantine protocols because he has innate immunity. Us normal humans don't. And with malls shut down and social distancing measures in place, it's not likely any kids will get to sit on his lap this year. And with my quarantine gains, kids like me probably shouldn't. Luckily, Santa and his helpers are pretty tech savvy. National reporter Chloe Nordquist shows us his new setup.
There's giggles and grins and Christmas cheer and lots of fun when you are here. So come on down.
Welcome to the home of Santa KJ and Mrs. Claus.
The children ask me, what's my favorite cookie? Well, I like the round ones.
Everyone has a childhood memory of visiting Santa.
There's nothing better than leaning down and getting that hug from the 5-year-old that comes running. And so we're going to miss that.
Due to COVID-19 and social distancing guidelines, home visits, hugs, and photos on Santa's lap might be non-existent this year. Santa KJ and his wife already had the virus once.
We caught it in July and got it together. It gives you a different perspective on what the year is going to be like, and children need to be protected. We need to be protected.
Which begs the question, how will Santa spread holiday cheer from a distance? It will take a little more lights, camera, and action.
Ow! This every time gets my nose. I'm here to welcome you to Story Time.
This is Susan Mesko, founder of the Professional Santa Claus School, also known as...
My name is Holly. I'm Santa's granddaughter.
Along with a list of helpers, over 100 of them, she's been putting together a project to keep the holiday cheer alive this winter.
We've been filming and working on it since mid-April. We've put a lot into this.
Susan has been training Santa Claus and his team since the 1980s. She was recently inducted into the International Santa Claus Hall of Fame, but this was something new.
We've really poured our hearts into this, and we're so proud of what we've come up with.
She's not going to let the Grinch steal Christmas this year, working around the clock to build a website filled with hours of videos and family fun.
Learning and singing and sharing and doing crafts and making cookies and learning hot cocoa recipes and seeing Santa's fire engine.
The list goes on.
The trend in the industry has gone to the virtual side.
Santa is getting ready to visit you virtually.
But the cost of Christmas cheer wasn't free for Susan.
We realized that it was going to be enormously expensive to put together something of the magnitude of what we wanted to give the children a 4-layered program. So I did mortgage my house, and I do believe in the people that I'm working with, and I really believe in this product.
A product filled with Santa's stories, sing-alongs, activities, and virtual live visits.
My day begins usually around 6 a.m. and ends around 4 a.m. We are doing editing and polishing and the final touches.
All set to launch on November 1st.
Guess what Mrs. Claus has been doing?
It's going to be back to the way we knew it before, and also have the video option in the future too.
While his helpers take precautions, Santa is too.
Santa is safe, and he's been in quarantine at the North Pole. So the children can be absolutely sure that on Christmas Eve, that if they are in bed sleeping, that Santa will come to their house. I want you to have a wonderful Christmas.
I'm Chloe Nordquist, reporting.
At this point, your holiday cards should already be on the way or delivered. What I'm learning is that overspending on gifts is easy when sometimes a handwritten card can really do the trick. To finish out the show tonight, we're going to tag along as national reporter Annie Taylor visits the world's top greeting card makers to visit more about this centuries-old gift.
I love the feeling of Christmas cards.
Every holiday season, Amy Goodnow remembers her dad by pulling out the cards she once wrote to him.
We were a big card sending family. I had it instilled in me from a very young age to write thank you notes for everything.
Now that she has a daughter of her own, every Christmas they've made it a tradition to send greeting cards to friends and family.
It says I love you, have a good week, thinking about you.
They're not alone. 1.2 billion cards are sent every holiday season.
Greeting cards
cards actually date back hundreds of years. It was popularized under Queen Victoria during her reign in the 1830s.
Samantha Bradbeer is the keeper of the vault at Hallmark. Cards from every decade live in this temperature-controlled room. Fast forward to card making today, the process starts here.
Some unfriendly little Christmas mice nibbled their way through the stockings.
Nostalgia, we might say, let's write some cards based on nostalgia and being kids at Christmas and the wonder and the magic.
Kat Stano, Hallmark's senior writer, says sincerity is key and remembering that everyone's Christmas is different.
You want it to be honest, but it's just thinking about people's current life situations and what they're going through.
Writing cards of encouragement, thinking of you, and Merry Christmas. Each year producing 2,000 unique holiday greeting cards.
There's a lot of detail that goes into the kind of work that I like to do. There's always some memory that can come up and help me to kind of guide me into what kind of composition and what I want to communicate.
A classic American Christmas. That's what Jeff Greenleaf, one of Hallmark's most famous artists, creates with each card he paints.
I grew up in Massachusetts specifically. I loved the winter. I loved being out in it, and I loved the holiday season. I just thought it was just a beautiful time of year.
His paintings begin with intricate sketches.
The way you can draw people in with a road or going home. I mean, there's a lot of emotion around that.
Jeff's art has been so well received, it became the inspiration behind Hallmark's Christmas movie, Evergreen.
Experience a magical movie inspired by Hallmark artist Jeff Greenleaf.
This is what Christmas is supposed to look like.
This holiday season, if you're looking for a gift that's a lasting memory, Amy suggests giving a handwritten card. It might be the best way to show someone you care. I'm Annie Taylor reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week for more In the Loop. Same time, same place. Until then, take care of yourself and each other in the safest way possible. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.